Well, uh, hello everyone. I'm really grateful that you have come to listen to us, to share, to ask questions, to find out things about us. And I would like to introduce my professor, my guardian angel of this university, my great friend, Caroline Vassy. She's professor of ILCEA 4, and her major is translation. But still, we cooperate very closely in terms of cognitive linguistics, and we have already had our common article that will be in the focus of our consideration today a little bit. Well, she will start. She will speak about the issues of possibility of sharing messages and information and emotions and feelings with Ukrainian informational space, within Ukrainian informational space. And we will try to answer the question whether or not it is still the insider's wine. So whether or not it may be deciphered, translated, put into the international realm so that everyone could have an access to this in case they want, in case they are willing. Yeah, and I will give the floor to my dear professor, and she will make the introduction into the issue of translatability of Ukrainian war memes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by thanking Genia for inviting me and giving me the opportunity of telling our story. So actually we met within the PAUSE program when Genia was welcomed at ILCEA 4, our lab, and where, well, first I received a letter from a Ukrainian cognitive linguist who was interested in the PAUSE program. And of course, I found it interesting. But little did I know. And that collaboration has been going on now for quite a long time, and it's been fascinating. So I will only say a few things about what brought us together. But I will give her the floor, because the truth is my contribution to this study that I'm going to present and to this paper has been minor. And it's really your ideas and your work that I'm talking about here. So what brought us together is a fascinating object, memes, and a special corpus of memes, which was generated in the context of the war between Russia and Ukraine. In that context, and it's been going on, my God, for 4 years now, more than 4 years, it's generated thousands of memes and probably millions by now.
No,
not
thousands.
Yet. But you've got the thousands.
You've got 10,000 at least. Yeah.
Thousands, yes, 10,000
only.
And those memes circulate on social networks like Telegram, like Instagram, and they have become a key medium for wartime communication. For us outsiders, for us French, we usually fail to grasp the full content of those memes. And that, to me, as a professor in translation studies and a cognitive linguist, that's been a fascinating issue. What's really fascinating about memes is that they seem to be immediate, to allow for immediate communication, but in fact, they contain layered cultural, political, and factual references that resist simple translation. So when you see the meme, there's something you can grasp. But if you're not the insider, as Genia says, there's a lot that you don't get. So we wanted to know what were the contextual factors that impeded the semantic readability and therefore the translatability of Ukrainian war memes for cultural outsiders. And to me, they're part of what Barbara Cassin calls untranslatables, les intraduisibles. They're really hard to translate, which is why they're interesting. Eugenia has managed to single out 3 context types. Probably you'll say more about this, but we've got the exegetic, so the specific war events, the political, the one relating to the geopolitical situation, and the cultural, the symbols, the folklore. But first, do we all have the same definition of a meme? Just to remind you that originally the word meme has been used by British biologist Richard Dawkins, and that's in his 1976 book, The Selfish Gene, where he actually explains that there's communication across brains through mimesis, and that there are things that allow for that immediate communication in his framework of evolutionary biology, things such as tunes or catchphrases or fashion. They're like memes because they establish that sort of immediate carrying cultural information from brain to brain in a sort of immediate way. Now, what we have taken from this is not really evolutionary. We don't take up that part of the theory. But we like to think of memes as rhizomatic frameworks. So I've put the image of the rhizome down there, and you probably know Deleuze and Derrida's theory, where there's no center, but there certainly is a lot of communication across the framework. Just that communication is everywhere and not centralized. I've given you an example of internet memes, the lolcats, the famous ones, and one Ukrainian war meme, which here I've shown accompanied by a narrative, and that is probably the second important point in Genia's analysis. Memes are accompanied by narratives because they're inherently narrative. The combination of the image and the language in the meme produces a story, conveys a story that's inherently metaphorical. And so Genia has strived to convey stories. And in the experiment, she's worked towards shared stories. Here, this part of the story is put here. The idea that the very existence of Ukraine is conditioned by the availability of modern weapons. And you see here on the meme that story conveyed. So the starting point was a corpus of 1,000 Ukrainian memes. I have been told that you now have 2,000, which we will hear more about this, and there will be more. Importantly, those memes have been annotated using a special tool.
I will speak about that.
And you will explain.
Yeah.
But from that corpus, we've extracted 24, and they are randomly selected memes. And then, so Genia produced the stories first, and then we had 10 Ukrainian informants rate those stories and edit. So the important part of that is in the survey, they were able to edit and suggest more elements. Starting from there, we had a reliable database of 24 memes with their stories, and we used that with 10 non-Ukrainian respondents, and yes, they were mainly French from here. They were shown that corpus of 24 memes and the narratives. And there were layers in the narratives, so we could see what they had understood and what they hadn't. From that, and I'm going quickly to the conclusions, but you can read the paper. It's published on our journal, the Althea journal. We isolated the semantically translatable memes, the ones that were roughly decoded in the same way on both sides, because we have the answers from the Ukrainians and we have the answers from the French group, remember? And so whenever there was shared widely shared political knowledge, like NATO air support, the sort of things everybody hears about. Or universal pop culture templates, such as Lord of the Rings. Those ones were almost 100% transparent. Everybody answered in the same way and recognized the different parts. But more interestingly, some of them were only partially translatable. And our groups focused on parts of the narratives, and they focused on different parts. Usually, I think, our outsiders, our French outsiders, they grasped the general message, but they missed some of the insider layers. Interestingly, the Nazi swastika. Because we don't call it this way, in French, we talk about croix gammée, and I think few people know about swastika being actually one of the first symbols found in Ukraine. In the first place where we found that symbol is actually Ukraine. So that's insider information, probably. Mm-hmm. And what we call the semantically untranslatable, the ones that will give translators a lot of work. And we love that. The context were read in an entirely different way because the outsiders were missing a lot of information about what was going on in Ukraine, basically. Right. So my interim conclusions before giving Genia the floor is that what we've seen is that the cultural context is the hardest barrier, and that memes on their own, they're not enough to break the cultural barrier at all. We miss a lot of information from those memes, and we need the stories. We need somebody to tell us the stories, and that's how it works. And I'll just say, you can read my slide, but I'll just say that cultural translators of memes should always talk to insider informants and try and map those semiotic systems to adjust the content for the national audiences. And that is work for human translators. You will probably say a few words about your dialogue with artificial intelligence, but that's for human translators only, really, for now.
Thank you. Here we are. Well, here you go. Caroline, thank you very much for your very good introduction of our previous stage of our work. As you know, I'm a senior fellow of Gates, and my basic topic is revolving around Ukrainian war memes and the possibility of their transcoding or coding or decoding for the international audience. And it crossed our mind that probably it might be interesting for foreign audience to find out more about the culture. But the main reason and the basis of our rationale lies much deeper, and that's something that I would like to speak about a little bit. First of all, one should be aware that nowadays Ukraine is under an immense informational pressure on different sides, on the sides of our immediate enemy and on behalf of the third parties, which are not really interested or probably not really willing to go into the context of the war. That is considered to be just one irritative moment in everyday news, something that causes anxiety and is not desirable. It's absolutely humane and it's psychologically explicable, but on the other hand, Ukraine has to struggle for its survival in terms of informational warfare. It has to keep sustainable informational space. And since nowadays we live in a so-called post-truth media condition, when nobody is interested in facts, everyone is interested in attention. We live in attention economy. The more attention you claim, the more successful you are. And it means that truth interests nobody practically. And under these conditions, Ukraine has to face the trillion-dollar propaganda machine that works against us. And this is actually the main point of the rationale of this project, that we need international support for revealing and rendering truthful information about the country. We need to stand against institutional propaganda, and memes were chosen not for nothing, because memes are the ways to render bottom to top information, because they are basically created on grassroots level. Because memes are created by the users of Telegram chats, of Instagram channels, etc. We have a couple of 3 institutional meme studios, but basically memes are created by the users, by us, by Ukrainians. And that process started from the very first hours of the war. You cannot believe how strong it was and how much emotional support it gave to us in the first hours of invasion, when we heard the first shelling in our cities and we didn't know what was going on. But they were streamers, people who risked their lives just to come into the streets of my native city, Kharkiv, and show what's going on in our streets. The first street shelling, the first hostilities in the streets, because we have Russian blockposts in the suburbs of our city in the first hours of the invasion already, you see. So there were small groups that invaded into the city, and there were already battles in the city already. And we saw it in the channels. And immediately there started emerging the memes, the first memes about that. And it was so much emotional support that I thought that this grassroots level exactly is the source for truthful information about things, you know. And it's not propaganda, and probably not counter-propaganda. It's the way to survive, you know, for those who do not know what's going on around them. You see, and later it transformed into more organized mimetic channels in Telegram, in more organized channels in Instagram, etc. So their role is really hard to exaggerate, because following the classical definitions, they provide quick emotional response. They are contagious in terms of spreading. They are created on grassroots level, and they are multimodal. That makes their influence even more powerful. So the purpose of the project, among lots of others, is singled out in bold to elucidate multimodal content for foreign cultures. Because whereas everything that was said, that was stated in the memes was clear for us, turned out to be absolutely untranslatable for the outsiders of culture. So how did it start? Caroline has already said that we had about 700 memes at first, in the first year, that I put together on the so-called VGG. I will show you the interface. Here it is, VGG platform, which is an application of artificial intelligence. However, all the information, making up stories, describing the context, picking up the memes, is all manual. Actually, artificial intelligence provides me with the possibility to put all the information together in one chart, and then when I have got all the memes together, to have certain kind of statistics in terms of different criteria. So what I should say is that notwithstanding a well-established definition of memes, Ukrainian war memes defy the standards in many respects. And this makes translating memes even more sophisticated a process. Why? Because first of all, about 40% of memes do without standard templates. Ukrainians created their own templates for memes, which are not known for the audience, which is even worse for translating. Secondly, they include nationally specific visual and verbal elements, the way that Caroline has already demonstrated, these kittens. Yeah, I even have to explain to Caroline what it came from, though we worked together for quite a long time. If you ask me this question, I will explain. There are lots of kittens in our memes, and there is a special story about that. It has nothing to do with animals. It has to do, but only partially. You see, it's metaphonemic, some kind of a metaphonemic form of mental operation with that. I will explain it later if you ask me. And besides that, our memes lack humor. Lots of them are means of rendering anger, self-deprecation, black humor in its worst variant, you know, and taboos like death and losses. So, besides cultural aspects, our memes have cognitive and semiotic barriers for translation because they carry lots of implicit meanings, lots of folklore, national concepts, symbols, which are really hard for foreign culture to decipher. Now, I'm going into the realm of cognitive issues of reading Ukrainian war memes. So I promise something scary, but I promise that I will be simple. For that reason, I created a kind of a cognitive barriers matrix that explains in terms of at least 4 components. Caroline spoke about 3. I will speak about 4, and Harvard Library, my partner on my fellowship, worked out about 12. But I think that it's not worth making things much sophisticated, because they are sophisticated even without that. Yeah, so I think that 4 factors will do. The first one is the lack of knowledge about the event, the very event that is depicted in the meme. So now we speak about ideational context, drawing on visual grammar by Kress and Leuven, who states that we can read images the way we read texts, and they put the parallel lines and align the texts, verbal texts, with visual texts in terms of one and the same criterion. However, these criteria look a little bit different naturally, yeah, in terms of verbal information and visual information. However, still you see that ideational context, ideational is a kind of a meta function of an image that renders the facts about the world. So this is how it is defined. So facts of the world nowadays become a little bit of an enigma for the outsiders, because on the one hand, we have a lot of things happening at one and the same time in the front line. Our front line is 1,300 kilometers now. You see, and it means that in every place of Ukraine, something is happening. You see, besides that, we are shelled by missiles, by ballistics that is far from the borderlines. You see, something is happening in terms of terrorism inside the cities. You see, and acts of terrorism happen here and there. You see, and it means that at one and the same time, so many events happen that the news are not physically able, even Ukrainian news, are not physically able to reflect and render all the information. You see, actually, Ukrainians, as a kind of way out, find local channels. And we follow the situation online in our city, and even in our quarter, you see, in our district. I know what's happening in my street here and now. You see, because we have cameras, we have streamers, with certain precautions, definitely, because our secret services warn people against taking photos of shelling, taking photos of the injured or the victims, etc., on absolutely natural reasons. You see, however, I know what's going on in my district now. You see, and it's very valuable. And you know how overloaded people are with this information, and especially emotionally overloaded. And the kind of release is again the meme. When you watch the movie, when you watch the news, and you are really distressed, now you see the meme, you start giggling sometimes. And sometimes you don't giggle because it is sad, but still accepted or perceived emotionally and visually, it provides certain release. Well, besides ideational context, cultural context is definitely the problem. Yeah, because we use lots of culturally significant concepts in terms of memes, and it's quite problematic to decipher. Historical context is a very important element now, and probably have heard about it, that our enemy uses lots of narratives concerning the very questioning the very existence of the state as the state, you see, because they say that anyway Ukraine is a part of Russia and it was developing along with Russia, etc. But somehow we already even have the facts that DNA of Russians and Ukrainians is absolutely different. You see, and it means that, and it's not our conclusion, it's conclusion of Stanford University. You see, and now they came to this conclusion, and somehow historically we're probably the parallel branches, but we develop differently in terms of different traditions, in terms of different historical context and background, etc. And definitely folklore, which is you may come across the plethora of different examples of folklore in the memes. But let's try our hand at this. And the first one, I believe, won't cause any problem. First of all, it is in English. And secondly, it depicts the person that you know. But there is one prerequisite for deciphering this meme that is a little bit problematic. Could you please read it? And then could you please tell me what is the basic takeaway of this meme?
Well, that the United States would be part of the UK because we speak English there.
And Canada, and New Zealand, and Australia, and part of China, Singapore definitely, you see, but it used to be the colony, yeah. Okay, and it's not for nothing that Charles III is smiling this way, you see. So this is exactly what aligns with Putin's narrative, that everyone who speaks Russian is supposed to be in Russia, you see. Though there are lots of different, even linguistic issues that may serve the argument against it. You see, because we do speak Russian, but it's not Russian of Russia. You see, it's absolutely different, with lots of Ukrainian components, to say nothing of West Ukraine, where they have Polish, Hungarian, Czech, and whatnot elements in their vocabulary. Well, and what about this? And this one will be hopeless.
Well, if you speak Russian,
You see, so it's all in English.
But it doesn't work.
It doesn't work at all.
You need to have.
Why? Because Sukhoi is the nickname of Sioux Sioux fighter. It's aircraft.
Well, not the nickname, but
Sioux
you would.
27, Sioux 35 that now fight in the front line. So this is the name of a fighter, a plane, an airplane, Russian airplane. You see, and its nickname is Sukhoi, which is in English is dry, renders nothing. You see, it's dry, but they know that Sukhoi is the plane. I know what it is like over my head. Yeah, they were flying over our heads the first month, at least, of the full-scale invasion. It's when your apartment is moving like the carriage, you see, because it beats the sound barrier, and that is why this wave hits against the walls and the ceiling and everything. Well, so and the second slide is when it is knocked down. It's already in the sea, and that is why it is wet. Yeah. So this is the plain words that even translated does work. I have to tell a story, and that's actually the point of my project. I'm telling concise stories for each meme, each of 2,000 memes. Believe me, it's quite a job. You see, and I have to tell the story just to render the message and explain why it is funny. Though it's hopeless work, because when you explain why it is funny, it's not funny any longer. There is only one consolation, that lots of our memes are not funny, and they just tell the story and just render the truth. Like that one. It's not funny at all. That's Ukrainian embroidery, yeah, traditional Ukrainian embroidery, but it is Sudoku at one and the same time. And it deciphers the losses of the enemy in terms of their tanks, armed vehicles, manpower, artillery, missiles, drones, and everything. They are deciphered in Ukrainian embroidery and depicted this way. You see, so actually you have to read the story first, yeah, and to see the figures and then to understand what it is about. But this is only half of the story, unfortunately, because another portion of my work is semiotic value of memes. And semiotic value is even more sophisticated because it doesn't only deal with verbal information and narratives, it deals with visual information and the significance of the visual information for memes. Because Ukrainian memes are not only classical memes in the full meaning of this word. So the memes that have the visual information accompanied by verbs. There are lots of anecdotes, just anecdotes, verbal anecdotes that render also semiotic meaning. You see, and there are lots of just pictures, posters that are not accompanied by the verbal information. They do not have captions. You see, but they are immediately read by the insiders, and they pose even bigger problem for outsiders of the culture. So the father of this theory is Charles Peirce, who was the first who created this triangle. I won't explain it, just for my students of visual semiotics, but the point is the upper angle. The point is interpretant. And there is always the point whether or not the interpretant is able to see what is depicted. Because not all pictures render the information directly. And he was the first to suggest that all the visual signs are divided into three basic types. The first type, and he recapped it under the notion of modality. I won't explain what modality is in verbal terms because it is absolutely different thing. But modality in terms of semiotics is the way of presence over the object that you depict in the picture. So whether or not the object is present in the picture that we have or something else is rendered. We will start with the easiest one, iconic signs, according to Charles Peirce. Icony is not in religious terms, but in terms of the presence of a certain object in the picture. Here we have an iconic meme, a classical iconic meme that depicts two very well-known people in Ukraine. I believe that you don't know them. The first one is the head of Military Secret Service of Ukraine, former head of the Military Secret Service of Ukraine, Kirill Budanov, who is now the head of the President's office. It's on the left or on the right? He's on the left. Yeah, and on the right there is the head of Security Service of Ukraine. But you see that they are dressed in a very specific way. They are dressed as if they were who? Military on the one hand, but they are wearing helmets. You see, and read the translation. It's repairing bridges. Any problem, speed and quality, it is named. It is definitely sarcastic because the background of this meme is what? The bridge of Crimea. The bridge of Crimea, one of the immediate targets of Ukrainian armed forces, you see? So it is more symbolic, I would say. It doesn't have any strategic meaning, but hating the bridge is a kind of the demonstration of the prevalence of Ukrainian armed forces in the Black Sea. Well, so you see that here they are depicted and we see them, so they are iconic, but it doesn't explain anything. You see, unless you know who they are, unless it is Charles III, you see? So you see that you are supposed to know these people, you're supposed to know them. Now they even became folklore characters nowadays. They are so frequent in our memes because Budanov has lots to do in terms of his name with Buddha. And now he's depicted this way because his poker face, when he never demonstrates his emotions, has become a part of folklore. Well, when they say that, for example, in one of the memes, they depict lots of different kittens again, with different facial expressions. You see, and they say, kittens may have about 20 facial expressions. And then there goes Budanov, they didn't live with me. And with his poker face, you see that there is a great contrast. And here, the sarcastic meaning of the meme is evident. This one is not funny at all. And it renders 50% modality. Because in reality, what is index? What is indexical sign? Indexical sign does not show the object, it indicates it. You see, and there are certain traces or signs of something that they indicate to. So, for example, dog's footprint is an indexical sign. We do not have a dog, but we have a footprint that indicates to dog. Here, we do not have any direct image of people or actions either. It is the Easter postcard, yeah, that says Christ is risen and Ukraine will rise. Actually, this is a kind of a greeting half adopted during the Easter time that is approaching. But what is significant here is the story that stands behind it. Because the Ukrainian Easter bread with the candle and with pisanka, with Easter eggs, which are painted in a specific way, which is a part of Ukrainian folklore, are all put where? What is the container? The container is a military helmet. You see, so here you see that the index just indicates to the situation that all the life of the of Ukraine and Ukrainian people is protected, you see, and safeguarded by Ukrainian military service, armed forces, you see, Ukrainian military service. Well, and we coincided with, we never agreed, you see, but I thought that it might be a very, there are lots and lots of them. There is the symbol. What is symbolic sign? Symbolic sign usually has nothing to do with the very object it names. All letters are symbols. Alphabetical building of language is symbolic building of language, because we have to have the mediator, the interpretant, you see, standing between the object of the world and the sign. There is nothing in common. You see, here we have, if only you know what it means, you see, because superficially, what do we have? We have the depiction of planes, yeah, and presumably Western models, they are not Russian models, yeah, that are built into the specific figure with the specific caption. But symbolic meaning of this meme lies in the fact that these planes create a what?
Trident.
A trident. You see, that is the symbol of Ukraine. You see, and this means that symbols create probably the most problematic portion of translation, since unless you know the symbol, you are not able to decipher the meaning.
What's the cat doing? Is the cat?
Is
Go
there?
back to the image.
Yeah, the same. It's the same. I will return to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I will. I will return to that. Yes, and as a conclusion, Ukrainian war memes are definitely the insider's wine. However, they render the truth better because they are multimodal. They render the truth better than any piece of news, than any straightforward message. Because any straightforward message for the prepared audience sounds like propaganda. When it is rendered through public channels, when it is depicting things which are just usual for Ukrainians, that are very familiar for them, it's a kind of people's democracy or diplomacy when they render the news better than anything else. However, their transformation into readable signs requires certain efforts on behalf of translators, and not simply verbal translators, but cultural translators. Because cultural translation here comes into the foreground. When we have to deal with folklore, with lots of specific language and slang, and I have a separate story to tell you how I communicate with artificial intelligence to suggest me different versions of translations, because it cannot read the context. It always asks me whether or not it is correct. You see, and I correct it, and then it suggests some other options. You see, and this is this ping-pong process continues until we work out the common version of the caption, because captions are usually very concise. They use lots of puns, lots of plays on words, lots of sarcastic implications that artificial intelligence is not able to read. You see, and I have to explain, I work with Grok. Grok wrote me a very long letter about the war in Ukraine, its opinion about that. It's so interesting, you know, and very touchy. Because my cooperation with ChatGPT didn't work out. We didn't find mutual understanding. Definitely, you see, but with
Concerned if you get along with Grok.
I get along with. No, you shouldn't, because it's almost always wrong. It's almost always wrong. You know, the problem is that, you see, because it cannot decipher all the meanings, and I have to explain. And sometimes I just shrug my shoulders and start writing myself because it's hopeless, you know. And that means that cognitive function and semiotic function of the meme all need transforming and need deciphering in terms of international or French national culture. You see, and it's very problematic to translate the captions, very problematic to explain certain things, because not always do they, the memes, render folklore things. They use lots of frames from famous Soviet comedies, Soviet movies, and it's all the context that outsiders don't know. You see, and it means that they need broad awareness of the cultural translator in terms of rendering its context. Their semiotic significance and cognitive significance is hard to exaggerate. There is one more thing, and I'm telling this not for nothing, because our talk today will be continued by the exhibition in the second floor. You're welcome to visit. And I have only 20 memes there, but they are all translated, and what is more important, explained with all the context underlying them. Please, you're welcome, visit it, and I believe that at least that memes will explain something about the insider's vibe of Ukrainian work. Thank you very much.